So, hi, Jessica, and thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course, I've, really been looking forward to speaking with you. So it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm happy we found some time in your quite busy schedule.
Me too. It's definitely been a wild time, so I'm really happy to be speaking now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Me too. Thanks. So, just to start, for those who aren't familiar with you, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like I have such a big story, so I will try to give you the condensed version. My name is Jessica Long. I'm a Paralympic swimmer. But before that title and what made me a Paralympic athlete is I was actually put up for adoption when I was 13 months old by a Russian girl. I believe she was 16 or 17, so very young, just couldn't take care of a disabled baby. And during this time, there was an American couple, Steve and Beth Long, who had 2 children, wanted a bigger family. They tried for about 10 years, but they were told that they had second infertility. So they looked into adoption, saw me and another little boy, and decided to go to Russia, Siberia, and get us. And it's incredible because it just, to me, it takes really special people, first to want to adopt, but also to adopt kids with challenges. And for me, I was born with something called fibular hemimelia, which basically means I'm missing all the bones in my lower legs. I was missing the fibula bone. They knew going into the adoption that I was going to have lots of surgeries. And the other little boy who they adopted, who's my now brother, he was born with a cleft lip and palate. But as luck would have it, 4 years later, they had a little girl and then another little girl. So I'm one of 6 kids. Very big family. To me, it doesn't seem that big, but at the same time, love the big family. But growing up, with something, fibular hemimelia, I've probably had about 25 surgeries along the way. So definitely not easy. But I'm so thankful that my parents were up for the challenge and, alongside me every step of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very unique and very, like you say, it's an incredible story. First of all, them coming over, adopting you, and helping you, to maybe have a better life than what you could have had if you stayed in Russia.
Yes, and I think as I've gotten older, of course, perspective, I've definitely learned more, what my life could have looked like. Especially in Russia, the older you get, the next orphanage you go to, and especially, they don't have as many caretakers. But more than anything, just, mobility. I don't think I would be able to walk. I had a foot at 18 months that my parents here in Baltimore decided to amputate. So you just never know what your life could look like. And I am definitely very grateful. But along, a lot of this, there's been so much success in my swimming world, but there's been a lot of, challenges and a lot of obstacles that have come my way, and just approaching it with a positive attitude and never quitting has definitely helped.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's awesome. Like you said, it's kind of, that's totally fine, of course. No, but like you said, you really, how can you explain it? Your life kind of changed, I guess, in major ways when you came to the US, but it gave you opportunities to get to where you are today. One of the best, or maybe the best Paralympic swimmer ever in the US. So that's awesome, really.
Yes, and it has definitely been a wild journey and a long ride. I definitely said this already, but the success doesn't come without, there's already so much that you're overcoming as a swimmer, as an athlete. But, my story, starting in a Russian orphanage, coming to the U.S., getting my little legs amputated, there was definitely lots of times that were really hard, and a lot of moments that people didn't get to see, going in and out of surgeries, draining tubes, infections. Every time I got a new set of legs, I had to learn how to re-walk all over again. So it wasn't like, I think the big thing with my journey and my story is it wasn't like I just overcame and picked myself up and just carried myself on. It was every couple months, every time I grew, I had to go back and get a surgery. Because kind of what ended up happening with what I was born with, the bone would start to curve, and it even came through my skin once or twice. But it's definitely been a wild ride. And I think if I can look back on all those really challenging times, it definitely set the bar high, just to not ever give up when things get tough. And I was able to carry that on into sport.
That's amazing. Yeah, truly. I want to speak more about all of this. There are so many things to talk about. But if we look at just swimming, I mean, when did you first start swimming? How did you get into that sport?
Well, I had always loved to swim. I used to swim in my grandparents' backyard pool. And I was that swimmer, or that little girl. I was like, I would eat my food as fast as possible, and just to get into the pool, which I know you're supposed to wait 30 minutes, but like, who does that? So I would be the first one in and the last one out, to the point where my parents were literally like packing up the kids, putting them in the van, and I was still in the pool playing. I would play mermaids. I loved playing with my siblings, or just being in the water. And I think the big thing there, and why swimming is totally my chosen sport, is I'm able to not wear any form of prosthetic. And I think to me, there's just this weightless, endless possibilities. And I feel so strong and capable. When I'm outside of the water, is when I feel the heaviness of my prosthetics, the heaviness, the weight, the pain. So that is why I've always loved swimming. But before I joined a swim team, I actually did gymnastics for about 6 years. And when my legs are off, I walk on my knees. I just get a little bit shorter. But my parents were really afraid that I would end up damaging my knees to the point of amputation, or not being able to wear the prosthetic legs that I wear today. So we sat down, we had a conversation. They just said, Jess, we need to find another sport that, you can stay active, because I was very active. I wanted to like move all the time. Or you're going to have to wear your prosthetic legs in gymnastics. And my prosthetic legs have changed so much over the years. So at the time, I didn't want to wear my legs. They were really uncomfortable. So I was like, let's try a new sport. I'd always liked to swim, so it just made sense, like, let's try swimming. And I was 10 years old when I joined a swim team, and I loved it. I was terrified, but at the same time, I loved how I was treated. And that is why I kept going back to the swim team, is just because I was treated just like everyone else. I wasn't treated like the girl with no legs.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. And I think I read an article with you where you said that it was kind of like freedom, being in the pool. It was, like you said, getting away from it, and just... yeah, it was something completely different.
Yes, yeah. For me, again, just taking off my legs, they're so heavy. But also I think there was, the adoption. The adoption was hard. And I think as a little kid, you can't really grasp and understand adoption as well. Like, I knew that I was adopted into an amazing, loving family. And all I'd ever been told is that my adoptive mom, or not my adoptive mom, my birth mom in Russia loved me, did the best thing for me. But there was still this like desire to prove myself, to prove like, you gave up your baby. I'm going to make sure it was, I was worth it. So I think, all of my years of swimming, it was that like trying to prove that I was like worth it. But at the same time, I still loved getting out energy and not wearing my legs, and pushing myself and figuring out ways to move in the water, even when I didn't have a strong kick. I don't kick in the water. So I really love that whole challenging part of swimming.
So do you think then that kind of, your motivation and your competitiveness, it came from the adoption and everything like that growing up? That's what fueled you kind of?
I would say it was actually anger. I don't know if we talk enough about anger or just feeling frustrated, but I was really angry. No one could tell me why I was born without legs. No one could tell me really why I was put up for adoption. My parents said all the right things. That again, that my birth mom was 16, 17. We're still a little unsure on that detail. But around that age when she gave me up, and it was the best decision and she did everything right. But there's still that anger that it's like, she didn't want me. Like, there was still the anger. And then there was anger going in and out of surgery. I had surgeries every 3 to 6 months. And I think it was just, to me, the water was a place that I could get out all of my frustration, almost to the point where I was so mentally, physically exhausted that when I got out of the water and faced normal life, I didn't have time to like be upset. Like, I don't know. And then I started doing really well. So of course, it starts as this love. Of course, it starts as a love for the sport. But then somewhere along the lines, you start to find your worth in sport, your worth in medals. And that came a little bit later, but it definitely started with wanting to prove myself and just feeling confident in my own skin.
Okay. And you started, getting quite good at it after a while, even though it started with a love for the sport. But when did you know that, okay, this is what I want to do? Like, I want to swim full time.
Yeah. So I joined a swim team when I was 10, the only girl missing legs. And I didn't know there was other people out there like me. I'd never seen another amputee, let alone missing 2 legs, young girl. And I didn't know that there was others out there like me doing sport. So we were at a local club meet. I had only been swimming, I think, for about a year, maybe at this point, year and a half. And one of the officials came up and asked my dad, Steve Long, if we knew what the Paralympic Games were. And we were like, no, like we obviously knew about the Olympics. I knew about the Special Olympics, but I didn't know that there was something out there, for me to be a physically disabled, compete at an elite level. And that's when we did some research and found out about the Paralympics. And it's amazing. I mean, even just the word para means parallel to the Olympic Games, Paralympic Games, parallel to the Olympics. And I just knew instantly that I wanted to become a Paralympian, just like every other, people dream of becoming Olympians. I wanted to be a Paralympian. And I was at one of the, we ended up going to some of the national meets, and I came at like kind of a good time because it was right before the 2004 Paralympic trials. And I was only 12, not expected to make Team USA, but I had this determination, this drive just to be the best that I could be. And I ended up going, and it's so funny because when I look back now, a little 12-year-old with so much attitude and sass, and I just said, I'm going to make this team. And my parents were like, Jess, it's a sweet goal, but like wait till you're 16, another 4 years. And I just said I was going to do it. And the morning they announced Team USA, my mom and my sister slept in. They didn't even come because like no one thought I was going to make the team. And my dad and I went just to see kind of who got named to Team USA. And then all of a sudden they announced Jessica Long. And I just kind of, I looked at my dad, I smiled like, I knew it, like I told you so. And then I got to go. And that's kind of when my life really changed. And, here I am. It's 18 years later, I'm still swimming, still aiming for my 5th Paralympics. But it really did start with that one just little dream as a 12-year-old to become a Paralympian.
And that's so cool as well. Like you said, 12 years old, that's incredibly young. And like you said, you kind of were just smiling. Okay, yeah, I made it. Because you already decided that you were going to go there. But that must have been just incredible when you made it and when you actually got to go to Greece to compete. How was that to compete at that level being so young? Were you nervous going into it? Did you feel any pressure? How did you handle it?
It's wild because again, it almost feels like it didn't happen. Like, being 12 years old, you don't think that you're young as a 12-year-old. Like I knew I was like young and I was almost a teenager, 13. So I thought I knew everything. But looking back, or now being older, a seasoned swimmer, and I see these little 14-year-olds and I'm like, oh my gosh, you are so young. But there I was being a 12-year-old going off to Greece away from my parents. I went to training trips with Team USA where I was home. I was away for 3 weeks at a time. And we had training trips in California. We had training trips in Colorado. But I loved it. I loved it. I loved racing. I loved swimming. And that's really, truly what it all boils down to, right? Is the love that you have for the sport. That's why I'm still swimming. But I remember just falling in love. I remember being so excited to go through team processing when you get all of your Team USA gear and not really being that nervous. Like I was like, what do I have to be nervous about? I'm not supposed to win. I'm not even supposed to make the finals because in swimming there's morning and night, prelims and finals. But in my first race, somehow, I'd seen other people winning gold medals and medals at the Paralympics, and we're racing in front of thousands and thousands of people. And I was only a freestyler at the time, but in my first race, it was the 100-meter freestyle, and I was up against the world record holder, who I've known of. I'd seen her in the village. She was, I think, in her late 20s, from Israel, and she was the world record holder. And somehow in my morning swim, I wasn't next to her, but I was seated first going into finals. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have a chance to even medal. But that night, I knew she was going to swim hard. I knew she was going to race till the end. She's the world record holder. And I don't know. I loved it. And I was like, it's just swimming. Like, we'll see. So there we are. We're at finals. The official says, take your mark. The buzzer goes off. And I dive in. And it's definitely everyone's swimming for that gold medal. And I always struggle with the first half just because I don't have my legs. I'm building into the race. And later I did find out that I was in 5th place at the flip turn, which is that's not the gold medal position that I was in. And I'm swimming and I'm gaining on her, and I can see, because at one point I was like by her feet, and I just realized I'm like gaining on her. And it's so funny. I will never forget this. And I've talked about this before, but we were about 15 meters out of the wall. And there was even though there was thousands of people and the crowd was going wild and my Team USA is cheering for me, my family's in the audience, I breathed to my right and I saw her. And I remember thinking, I did not come here to get second. And we touched the wall so close. I mean, it was about a fingernail now that I'm older, 1/10 of a second. And I mean, it was crazy. It set the bar so high. It was my first race, first youngest ever win a gold medal in the Paralympics. It definitely set the bar high, but it was an amazing experience. And I went on to win a couple more gold medals somehow.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm just I can picture it in front of me now when you're telling the story, that's insane. Like you said, just coming there and not really expecting anything. But then when you're in the water, I didn't come here to finish second, and then winning. I mean, that must have been, just incredible. Like you said as well, you won, I think, 2 more gold medals, right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
I know. But it's been fun.
Yes. I mean, how was that? How did you deal with that after? Because I'm guessing you got more attention, coming out of the games, being 12, winning 3 gold medals, beating, you said, the reigning champion, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible, but at the same time, Paralympics wasn't as big as it is now. I mean, the movement is still growing. People now know who I am. If I go to the grocery store, which is really cool, if I wear certain legs, I have my name in our Olympic park. But back then, as a little 12-year-old, no one knew really what the Paralympics were. And Michael Phelps, I'm from, we're in the same hometown together. I was getting some attention. I was getting articles written and I was in parades. But my big thing, I remember being in Athens, Greece, being asked to do a phone interview with the Baltimore Sun, which is here in Baltimore. And I just said, I really want to meet Michael Phelps because I had seen him compete that, in Athens. And then we came a couple weeks later for the Paralympics. But yeah, I mean, it was cool. I got to meet him. I got to, do so many things. But at the same time, I was really aware as a 12-year-old that people did not know what the Paralympic Games were. And I did not like that because I was like, I just won some gold medals. And that, I think, became my mission to really grow the Paralympic movement and to bring it where it is today. And I think, as even in the US, we still have a lot of work to do, but it's amazing to see other countries know what the Paralympic Games are and be so proud of their Paralympic athletes. And I still think that's something we need to work on. But as a little 12-year-old, it probably didn't even get better till I was 20, the Paralympics getting sponsorships and stuff. And it wasn't like I didn't have some sponsors, but I think it was more, companies kind of checked it off the list. We'll add 1 Paralympic athlete. Now what you see is sponsorships they sometimes have more Paralympic athletes than they have Olympic athletes on their campaigns. So it's really come a long way, and I'm definitely really proud to be a part of it still.
Yeah, and I saw also that June 23rd, I think this year, was the first ever Olympic and Paralympic day, right?
Yeah, why? I mean, but to me, I think there's no difference. We compete for Team USA. And it's amazing. I mean, I know almost every Olympic athlete you can think of. I've had opportunities of meeting old legends and seeing the up and coming athletes. So to me, there shouldn't be any difference. But it's definitely been really exciting to see the growth and even just company. I've partnered with some really cool people and just how excited they are about the Paralympic athletes. It's this is what I've been waiting for since I was 12 years old. We are arriving kind of thing.
Yeah. So it kind of started then, your drive to make people see Paralympics as well. And then, I mean, how how was that this year? Like you said, it shouldn't be a difference, but still, like, did it feel good for the first time that they kind of recognized it together, I guess, after fighting for it for such a long time?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of really good changes. So even like Operation Gold, which is our medal money, we were not even getting, I think we were getting like a third of the medal money. So now it's like equal. You get the same pay. Sponsorships are the same. I really love, and this is so silly, but in Athens, we actually had a different colored jacket for our medal podium. So like they wore like blue pants, a jacket that was like white sleeves and like a red kind of part. Maybe this was Beijing. I think this was Beijing.
Okay.
But the Paralympic athletes had blue, blue, red. So like everyone knew that we were different. So there's been so many little changes like that. Like now our medal uniforming is the same. Like it's not any different for like the Olympic athletes or the Paralympic athletes. Like even down to like the coloring. So I've always noticed that. I think it should always be the same. And I'm definitely really excited to see even more growth. I still think there needs to be little changes here and there, but for the most part, I'm really proud of, a lot of the, what the companies are doing or the people that support the Paralympic Games or the Olympics. It's come a long way.
Yeah, since you first went the first time in 2004, that's good at least that it's moving in the right direction.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. And I mean, we could keep talking, about your success for, I guess, like another hour or something, because after, the Paralympics 2004, you went on to win, I think in total, if I'm getting this number right, 23 Paralympic medals, 13 of them being gold.
Yeah, that's like the ones I count. No, just kidding.
Yeah, no, but something like this. And I mean, I read as well, like 52 World Championship medals. 35 gold. Yeah, maybe you're not keeping count, but I read this online and I was like, that's just insane. I mean, it's so many medals. It's crazy. And I think it was one year where you broke like 18 world records that year. So, I mean, this was just like the beginning of several years of medals and awards. So looking back at it, do you think you have like one favorite memory or maybe a few that you could pick?
Yeah, I mean, all of them are so great. I think when I look back on my career and journey, I see more, sometimes I get a little sad because I'm so proud of the medals and the world record stuff. And yes, I definitely get excited when I'm like, I hear it. But I think, when I look back on some of my career, I more hear just kind of like a sad, like those are really tough times. And a lot of times, trying to break the next world record and trying to get the next gold medal, it was just this, like, at points in my life, even in my career, I never felt good enough, and I think it's really interesting because you hear that time and time again that, this idea of reaching perfection is going to make everything like perfect. Your life, everything's going to make sense. And if anything, it brought on more questions and more doubts and more. So I'm really proud of everything. I am definitely, there are races that stick out. I loved the 100 butterfly in London because I was seated second and it shocked me. My world record got broken in the morning, came back and then won the gold. And I love those like last second races that come down to the fight. And I do not understand. I mean, I'm definitely a hard worker, very hard, and I show up and I give 110%. Like I definitely am that athlete, and I think it's my performance speaks for itself. But there are moments where I'm like, I have no idea how I won that race or why am I having all this success? And I'd like to think that it's, to share my story with the world and to, hopefully inspire. I definitely want to be an inspiration. I don't mind that term. But also I get really excited for the next generation, seeing what they're going to do in Paralympics. But yeah, it's still all growth. I'm still learning. I'm still growing in Paralympics, and I still plan to swim for a couple more Paralympics. But for the time being, it's been wild. I don't know. It all started just because I like to swim.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, aside from just winning medals, you've also gotten like a bunch of different awards. I mean, I can't even like, read all of them. But for example, you get the AAU James E. Sullivan Award. So that was like the most outstanding amateur athlete in the US, and you were the first and still only para-athlete to receive this. This type of awards, how important are them for you? Like this type of recognition? Because you spoke about before, it's all kind of a blur. It's a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Oh, well, that award was definitely really meaningful. I think because it wasn't just for a disabled person, like a disabled category. And it was I was up against Michael Phelps, Sasha Cohen, Apollo Ono, some huge names, Candace Parker. And I only went to the awards because I was excited to meet the other athletes. Like, I never thought I would win. And it's so funny that you're saying this because I was just talking to my dad about this award a couple days ago, maybe like a couple days ago. But just like, he was telling me, he was like, Jess, just in case you win, like, prepare a speech. And I was like, Dad, I'm not going to win. And then I won. But it was funny because if you actually watch the tape, when they announced the winner, I'm clapping for the winner, like not realizing that they announced my name. But to me, that was really exciting. And again, my mission, my purpose, I want Paralympic athletes to break those types of barriers. And I was upset. Like, I still sometimes deal with this is people will come up to me and say, oh my gosh, you're the Olympic swimmer. And I'm like, well, yes, I'm in the Paralympics. And as soon as I say Paralympic, there's an instant, like, you can see they're not as impressed, right? Like, they're like, oh, so you're not in the Olympics. And my goal, I think part of the reason I'm still doing this sport, obviously I love it, but I want to get to a point where no one ever questions what, the eliteness of a Paralympic athlete. I still train hours a day. And even for me as an athlete, I decided that I was so tired of people looking down on Paralympics that I was like, well, let's see how I do with the Olympic athletes. And that's when I made the decision to come back home in Baltimore, Maryland and train under Bob Bowman, who is Michael Phelps's coach, who was my coach for a couple years. And I trained with all Olympic athletes and did all of the Olympic workouts. So I will never have to question if I am good enough to train. Like, my training is I was doing the same workouts as Michael Phelps. I may have to make adjustments, of course, but it just proves to me that, like, I am still I'm not just a good Paralympic athlete, I'm a good athlete. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I guess that's something that probably fuels you as well. I mean, from what I understand of how you are, the competitiveness in you, having people, doubting, I guess, if you're really working as hard, being a Paralympic athlete, it's probably something that you kind of want to prove as well, like you said, like making people understand that there's not really a difference, it's not.
Yeah, I think people just understanding just how elite Paralympic athletes are, and that it's my job. Like, my job is to swim and do weights and sacrifice and get to the Paralympics. Now we have this opportunity that it's another year away if it even happens. But just definitely, working as hard as I can. And I love that. I love surprising people because even now I'll get into the pool and I'll swim with like locals. So I swim at a club, Merit Athletic Club. And other people come in and out and swim. And it's so funny because there's this little blonde. I have muscle, but it's not like I'm just giant. I mean, it's so funny because they'll be like, oh, like, can you even swim? And then I get in the water and I just blow them out. I'm like, oh, people need to stop doubting. But I love that. I love surprising people and I love surprising even myself. So
yeah, just showing them that they're kind of wrong, I guess.
Yeah. Like, I don't think you should ever doubt them. Just a strong heart. What am I trying to say? Yeah, just determination is so powerful and strong.
Of course. And I mean, you spoke a little bit about Michael Phelps now, so you trained together with him. And I know that today a lot of people kind of compare you, saying that you're the Michael Phelps of Paralympic swimming. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Maybe he's the Jessica Long of the Olympics.
Exactly.
I know. I don't really want to be compared to anyone. I mean, that's definitely a very high compliment. And Michael is fantastic. I mean, what he has done for the sport of swimming, and even just, I've seen his character outside of the pool. We were by the pool a lot, but just how kind of a person he is, and he definitely was going through his own stuff. I think if you look at successful people, there's stuff that I feel like almost all successful people, everyone has a story, but like for me, it was my adoption. I think Michael, he was going through his own stuff and mental health. He's been talking a lot about mental health, but he was a really great teammate. And one of my favorite memories is we were doing this set. It was like a 7,000 meter set, IM, And I struggled with IM a little bit because, breaststroke and backstroke are a little bit more leg dominant. So I would struggle a little bit more than like fly and freestyle. So it just was one of those days that took me forever to finish the set. Like I wasn't going to get out unless I finished the set. And it took me, I was like the last one in kind of thing, just like could not move. And everyone else, some people had left, some people were like drying off. And I walk on my knees. So my legs are like leaning up against this like bench. So I'm like waddling over to my legs and he like sees me and he's like, oh, like I was the last one out. And he's like, J-Lo, because he always called me J-Lo, Jessica Long. And like just got a little shorter. He like crouched down and like opened up his arms for a hug. And I was like, yes, it was hard, but I completed it. But I think that was one of the nicest things. Just as a teammate, he was still such a cool guy. Even though he was Michael Phelps, he was always very kind to me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But like you said, still, even though he's amazing at what he do, like you don't want to be compared to someone else because at the end of the day, you have your own story and you do what you do.
I think we already, as a society in our world, the comparison is one of the biggest things, not even just in sport, but right, everyone deals with comparison. And I think we have to be really careful with that just because, we're each our own person and comparison can steal joy and make you never feel good enough. And I think even now as an athlete, there are times that I have to just get off social media because it's so easy to compare yourself to other Paralympic athletes or other people and just taking those breaks when needed.
Yeah, of course. No, that's important. I definitely agree with you. It can be a very negative spiral. I think it's not very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said before, you're a 4-time Paralympian and you're going for a 5th with the Tokyo Paralympics. But how would you say that your approach kind of to swimming and what you're looking to do has changed since you first went to the Paralympic Games in 2004 and where you're at now?
Yeah, really good question. I definitely feel like I'm a much smarter swimmer, which means, maybe just paying attention to what my body needs. And definitely as an athlete, I've been doing it long enough that I know kind of, certain things I have to be doing in the weight room, certain things I have to be eating, certain things I have to be taking care of my mental health, being in a really good spot, having a balance. Swimming can't be my whole world. Like I love swimming, but it can't be everything. But that doesn't mean when I show up to the pool and I am at training, like I'm going to give everything in that moment. But when I come home and I'm newly married and I have a family still of 6 and nieces and nephews, there's a time and place to like think swimming and just finding that balance. But more than anything from the like athletic standpoint is just becoming a smarter swimmer. So when I was younger, I was cranking out so much yardage. And now it was kind of considered garbage yardage, but you're building this base. You're putting all of that like yardage into the bank is what we would always say. Like, oh, another like 8,000 set in the bank. So now that I'm older, it's funny. I'm swimming not as much yardage, same amount of time. It still can take me 2 hours, but I'm swimming so much smarter and so much more, paying attention to my technique and paying attention to just, if my shoulders hurt, just not pushing through it, some of the pain and like being aware of everything a little bit more. But also just the mental health. Like I would say I still love swimming and it doesn't mean it's easier. If anything, now that I'm older, it's gotten harder to like want to show up. But yeah, swimming smarter swimming and using my time more wisely.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not too familiar with all the expressions, of course, of swimming, but I know what you mean, like getting smarter with what you do in the pool. But has your view changed when it comes to like success? Do you view success differently today than what you did when you were younger?
For sure. There was a time that I thought if I got a silver medal that I had failed, right? That was failure, which is just so funny. Now, for sure, I think more than anything in the Paralympics, kind of what's happening right now is there is some misclassification and we're all in different classes and it's something I have spoken about and it's really hard. It's really frustrating to know that people are kind of cheating the Paralympic system. And at the end of the day, I can only control me. And I don't even know if you've heard about all this, but it's really hard. It's hard to know that I've had competitors sit there and tell me like, I know I'm in the wrong class. And I'm like, okay, well, I still don't have legs at the end of the day. So I have had to work really hard on controlling the controllables. I definitely feel frustrated because I think it could end up ruining Paralympics. And that's a whole nother conversation. I work really hard on controlling what I can control. And at the end of the day, that's me and my swimming and showing up and being the best that I can be, even if I feel like the system has been a little crazy. But I still love swimming, and I definitely, to view success now, I think it almost means more, which is crazy. I think I look back on some of the medals that I've won and some of the awards, and I'm so proud of it. Obviously, people take me a little bit more seriously, but at the same time, I'm still just a person who loves to swim. I don't know if that makes sense. I love swimming, but it's success. I don't know. I think the big thing here is if you don't feel like you are good enough without a gold medal, you're not going to be enough with a gold medal. Does that make sense? Like, gold medals are great, but they're not everything. But it's easy for me to say because I have them. But there's still challenges that come along, like even with winning. So.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that makes sense, especially being 12 years old, winning, gold medals in the Paralympics. I think it's easier to look at it in a more mature way, obviously, when you're a bit older and kind of understanding everything else, aside from the medals as well. But I mean, you just said that you love swimming, obviously, and it's very obvious that you're so passionate about it. Do you think that's something that's, important for anyone who's looking to succeed, to be very passionate about what they do?
Absolutely. Yes. That's something I talk a lot when I do public speaking, speaking, motivational speaking. And one thing I always say, number one thing is finding your passion. And I think people will be so surprised with just what can come along in terms of success with finding your passion. And success isn't necessarily breaking the world record or going to the Olympics, but it could just be setting a goal for yourself. And I think when you find your passion, it kind of fuels your purpose, or vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. If you figure out your purpose, it could be your passion. But I think passion is huge, and I think it could be anything, right? For me, it's swimming, but it could be cooking, it could be math, it could be, I don't even know, but I definitely think passion is what keeps me still swimming, is that I love it, even though it's kind of, it definitely has turned into more of my job. At the end of the day, I do have to go back to that little 12-year-old Jess, or little 10-year-old Jess who started swimming. And I would say the moment you start not loving what you're doing, or you don't feel as passionate, I think just maybe it's time to take a break. Maybe it's a time to kind of pull back. Because I've seen too many swimmers get burned out just because, they're not as passionate anymore, and that's okay. But taking a break and realizing that, you love it. And for me, I mean, there were times I wanted to retire. And as soon as I found different ways to give back to the sport, for instance, I started coaching for a little bit, and that just made me realize, okay, I'm not ready to give this up. I love seeing swimming through their eyes, these high school girls. And that really helped me fuel my passion.
So is that kind of what inspires you still today? Like your love for swimming, or?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture, right? I love swimming. I love still improving. I want to see what I can do even being older. I think I've overcome bitterness, even with all the classification stuff. I've really worked hard to, fall in love with swimming and what I can control. But I also get really excited for the next generation. Like, I think for so long, I was proving to everyone that, to prove them wrong, right? To prove them that I could do it. I was Jessica Long. Mm-hmm. Now I'm like, all right, now let's prove to people that they can do it too, right? They can become their own. They don't have to be Jessica Long. They become their own self, right? Like, I don't want to be compared to Michael, just as people shouldn't be compared to me, but proving that they can go as long as possible. I'm 28 and breaking that norm that, oh, I'm too old as a swimmer. I love breaking down barriers and all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, like you said before as well, it's maybe easy for people to, view all the success and forget about all the challenges on the way there as well. I mean, just because you started becoming successful at such a young age, I mean, you still had to face other challenges as well, along the way. You spoke a little bit before about, having to go through more than 25 surgeries. I mean, how old were you when you had your last surgeries? Was it like during 20 years, or?
I probably still need one more surgery. And I've put it off for a little bit, but I was maybe 23. Was I 23? Maybe 20, something around there, 23. maybe 2021. But if anything, what I'm dealing with as I've gotten older is infections. So like those infections are almost, to me, I'm out for 3 weeks. I'm taking heavy doses of antibiotics. I've had infections where I had a PICC line go down to my heart, where I had to like pump antibiotics for 4 months. Like I did it all by myself. Like, so basically it was an IV that was in my arm all the time. But yeah, I look back and I think sometimes, obviously those struggles and those obstacles, they make us who we are. And I do believe that you can become stronger through the process of overcoming, right? Stronger. It's not easy, and everyone's given that choice to really give in or to find a way to pick yourself back up, even if it's hard. And I think what gets me through is when I look back on my life, I've overcome every single tough day. We all have. We've all overcome every single tough day, every single moment. And that doesn't mean that the pain always goes away, right? Like I can still look back on my childhood and remember so much of the pain, and sometimes I don't remember things because it was so painful. And that's more my physical pain, right? But there's still emotional pain, and time helps, and things have definitely gotten better as I've gotten older. But yeah, there was a lot of moments that I think it's so hard just to understand why. Like it's that I think a lot of people can get hung up on why me? Why is this happening? Why is this my life? Why was I in this accident? Why was I born like this? But I do really think you have an opportunity to shine and to be different and be unique. And I think that's one way that I look at my legs, is that I was given this opportunity and I don't intend to waste it.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, I don't know how you could explain it better than that. And I mean, like you said as well, a lot of people are, looking at it like, okay, why me? Why is this happening to me right now? And I was going to say as well that a lot of people, they kind of give up, like they get maybe one injury or a challenge, and it's easy to give up and just quit. But you had to go through so many of these difficulties and challenges. What motivated you to, keep going?
Yeah, I really liked what you said, but I think just for me, quitting wasn't an option, right? I think everyone's going to go through something really hard in their life, and something that maybe I haven't gone through, right? I haven't gone through, there's been things in my life that I haven't gone through. I haven't gone through a death really in the family. Like, I mean, I don't even, people find ways to overcome it. And even that's probably a bad example of overcoming, but time helps heal. And I think for me, people, it's really hard to relate not being an amputee. I think that's really hard, but I've been able to really touch lives through, my swimming or through my adoption. But I would definitely say, I think what it really boils down is not quitting. And even when it's hard, right, overcoming or putting yourself through therapy or getting up even when you don't want to, right? It's like, what is it? Fall 7 times, stand up 8. Like you just have to keep finding ways to pick yourself up, even when you've been beaten down. And that definitely, I could definitely say, looking back on my life, there were moments that I would have a leg surgery and then get an infection, and then I had my appendix rupture, and then I got my tonsils out and back in for a leg surgery and an infection. It was a constant thing. So even between all that success, there were other things in my life that I was overcoming, and it just, you really are, people really are so resilient and strong. And I think we need to remember that even when tough times come, just how strong we all are.
Yeah, and I really like what you said as well before, that we all really have overcome, the challenges that we were faced with. That is so true. And I think that's something that maybe people forget about, that you have actually already overcome so many challenges to get to where we all are today, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and that's something too, even when I'm having a really tough swim practice, and in swimming, I'm doing the same thing over and over again, right? I'm racing. I'm racing the clock. There's only 4 strokes. I've done the same drills, the same distances my whole life, or for 18 years. And I just have to remember in those moments that I have overcome every single practice. It may not have been pretty, but I still finished. And I think people can really learn, like, take that into your everyday life. We've overcome every tough day, every moment we felt sad or down or not good enough or not excited to just live. We still, I hope people will still find ways to get up and take on each day, even with all the new challenges. So, but yeah, I would just say, even overcoming, right? It still takes work. And I think people need to recognize that it does take work, and knowing that it's going to be hard at times, but to put in that work and that effort to get to a point where you do find recovery, right? As an athlete, and maybe, you being an athlete as well, just having shoulder issues and I could continue to swim in pain for the rest of my life, or I could put in 6 months hard work of recovery, PT, and get almost back to normal. Like, just putting in that work, I think people need to realize sometimes recovering is painful, but finding ways to get through the recovery process. So
yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Essentially, that's being an athlete. That's a way to look at it as well. What would you say? Maybe there are people who are listening to this and they're not athletes, but they're still super inspired by you and your story. I mean, what advice would you give them to, get past challenges that they're facing or adversity?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of, I definitely touched upon this, I think, a little bit, but definitely facing challenges or adversity, like, I think people forget that they really are so strong. Mm-hmm. And I think, but even in that strength, it's okay to at times feel weak. And what I mean by that is reaching out to people when you need help, right? I think there's a lot of strength in saying that I am struggling, and, finding that good support system. And whether that is your family or sports or friends or relationships or people that become your family, just reaching out when you really are struggling, but also knowing that you are so strong and capable. And that, again, you've overcome every tough day, and it may not have felt pretty. It may not have looked pretty, but recognizing that, as long as you're putting in the work, I truly think there's nothing you can't overcome. And I do think time heals wounds. And again, I'm just speaking from my experience, and I get so inspired by other people's stories. But I would say what has helped me become so successful or overcome is really looking at these challenges as, like, you try to tear me down or you try to stop me, but I am going to overcome this, and I'm going to figure out a way to get past this struggle. And that's always helped me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, and that really goes for, of course, like athletics, but also for everything else, like in life, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as we get older, things do get harder, it's real life, and there's more emotions, and I think there's a lot more self-medicating people, and just, finding joy. I think we got to get back to getting rid of the comparison, finding joy, and realizing that we are so strong, in numbers, which is, supporters or supporting each other. So.
Yeah. And I also watched, there's this video that you did with I Am Second. What did it mean to you to participate in this project?
Yeah. Well, that was super cool, just to be able to share my story and just my faith. I mean, I definitely think my faith has played a huge role in my life. But that's just my story, and I would never throw that on people. But I am a Christian. I definitely think it hasn't always been easy, and people might not get it, and that's okay. But what I believe in and what I stand for has really helped me overcome in ways. But that was really cool. I think more just, it was so raw and real. And it was like the first time I just really shared a different side of me, which is my faith. And it was really cool to have people reach out and say, hey, I don't really get it, but like, thank you for opening up. And I mean, even the fact that people watched it was really cool.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, even though that might not have been something you opened up a lot about before, I'm sure that's probably something that played a huge part in, I mean, obviously like your life, but also in, I guess, your motivation and your mindset when it comes to swimming.
Yeah, it did. There were moments I didn't really understand it. And, it's definitely sometimes a tough topic because, not every people, I don't know, just Christianity. I think the world has kind of twisted it into like, it's not as complicated as we make it. But, growing up, I just finally felt good enough and giving my heart to Christ. And that was kind of my decision. I think that's the coolest thing, is we all have a decision to believe whatever we want. And, but for me, it worked out, and I'm not perfect. I still struggle every single day. But that was really cool how they showcased just my story. And yeah, if anyone wants to go and watch it. But just some of the anger that I felt, and some of the anger that I felt, with why I was born the way that I was. But it is kind of cool because again, talking about taking work and working really hard to overcome some of those negative thoughts about myself really came from my faith and stuff.
Okay, so kind of like the anger that you spoke about before that you felt kind of growing up.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely feeling really frustrated, really angry, not understanding why was I made this way. And for me, I do believe, in God and that he made me this way. And I think sometimes it's really easy to feel angry or anger from that. And I just had to realize that, okay, I have this story to touch lives. And if it's going to be someone who can overcome some of this, why not me? And it's not always easy. There are days that even today, it's hard to walk. It's hard to go up steps. It's hard. I have every reason to be angry. I have every reason to be upset. But instead I choose to look at my life in a positive way. And why am I going to be angry for the rest of my life that I was put up for adoption and I spent 13 months in an orphanage, only 13 months of my life? Why would I focus so much on just those 13 months when I have 27 years that I was adopted into a beautiful, amazing, great family. And I get that that's not everyone's story, but I want to focus on so much of the good that is so much more of my life than just being put up for adoption or just being born without legs. And that's definitely really helped me, is focusing on just all the good. And it's so easy. And I think we do that already, right? People can say so many mean, negative, nasty things, and someone could be saying the same amount of positive things, but we go to the negative. And I think we need to remember all the good in our lives. And if we focused on the positive as much as we do on the negative, I think people would be surprised by the amount of joy that they can feel. And it's not easy. I'm not saying this happens overnight. I'm just saying, it's just focusing on all the positive. And you hear that from people, right? Talking about, the gratitude, focusing on gratitude or being grateful for so many things. And I just think if people spend 21 days, right, create a new habit, focusing on all the good, I think we'd be really surprised by what could come in our lives.
Yeah, and I read also this motto or kind of quote that you have, which was, the only disability in life is a negative attitude. Is that still something that goes along with that as well, trying to be positive?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I've met people without arms or legs, or people who have become paralyzed from car accidents, or little people. I've met people who have every reason to complain or be upset, and they have these amazing, bright, positive attitudes about it. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that they don't wake up and question or get upset at sometimes, but for the most part, their character, the way that they are, just the way that they carry themselves, is positive. And I do think I've seen that in my life versus people at, say, a Starbucks getting upset about a coffee order that wasn't right. And you're like, pick your battles. This is not that big of a deal compared to people I know without arms and legs, and they're just happy to be alive. And I do think it doesn't take away from your pain, right? It's not saying that you're not allowed to feel pain in your life or frustration, but also I do think a positive mindset, a positive attitude can take you so far in this life. And don't believe me, try it out for yourself, and then let me know how it goes. But I do think a positive attitude really changes the course of your life, and training your mind to see the good in everything. And that's hard, but you have to train, just like I swim every day. You have to train your mind to see the good at all times, even when it's hard. So
yeah, and just perspective, kind of, like you said, it's just about perspective, I think. Like you said, you pick your battles, and some people maybe get annoyed or upset with things that, it's not really that big of a deal. I think that's quite common.
Yeah, I definitely think perspective is huge, and our perspective should, I love the idea of growing and your perspective changing. And that's something, looking back as a 12-year-old versus now, my perspective has obviously shifted, but also in everything, right? What's important, what's not important, picking your battles. And I think that people, just learning and growing and evolving. I don't understand how people don't want to become the best version of themselves. But that's what inspires me, is people choosing to see the good in everything, even when they're going through it, right? Through the tough times, through the challenges, they choose to see the good. And then also, just being the best version of themselves, right? Just always wanting to be better. And that could be just drinking more water, exercising even when it's hard, or getting out of bed, or just those little things to me that are so difficult, right? Like even just making your bed every day. Do you know how many people just such a small, simple task? Like it's doing those small little things, I think, create success. So yeah, I don't know.
No, but that makes sense, definitely. Like you said, I love that example of just making your bed. I mean, I'm sure so many people just skip it. I'm actually a great example. That's like a small thing that if you just start your day doing that, that would be like completing the first task.
Yes.
Really.
And I think like even in my life, like I want to be successful and I want to be in charge. You know, I want to inspire people. I want to give speeches and I want to do all these amazing things. But I also think, again, it starts with just making your bed or doing these small, simple tasks that people, consistency, right? I am a good swimmer because of consistency. And I just think people just working hard and being consistent, and success does not happen overnight. But again, those small, simple tasks, are you doing them well? Like, I don't know. But yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about your book, because you wrote this autobiography called Unsinkable together with your sister, actually. What inspired you to write this book?
Yes. Yeah. My sister, she's in town right now, so super excited. But
okay.
It's super cool. You know, I remember being maybe 10 or 11 years old with my dad in the car on the way to swim practice. And I had done nothing in swimming. And he just said, Jess, one day I think you're going to write a book. And I was like, okay, sure, Dad, whatever you say. But it's so cool because, you know, even then my dad believed in me that, you know, one day you're going to do great things. But here we are. The book's been out for a couple years or 2 years. And I wrote it with my sister, my younger sister, Hannah, who is the miracle baby. And I really think, you know, for me, in order to write a book, I had to go back and meet my Russian family. And it's all in the book, Unsinkable. There's pictures, but you know, I think I really wanted to open up and not always have this hardness or this toughness or this anger. And I wanted people to really get a different side of me. And it's, you know, we talk about moments of my life, but also relating it back to you, the audience, and just different moments, right? Moments when I was frustrated with the way I was born, moments that, you know, I didn't understand success or overcoming success or meeting my biological family. You know, life's unpredictable, and overcoming an eating disorder and overcoming feeling not good enough and kind of where I was in my life, and just this really raw book. And it was really special to do it with my little sister. We actually had a different writer for the book, but I was just having a hard time opening up about everything. And the whole point of the book was to open up and to have people like get to know me, a different side of me. So I kind of suggested to the publisher, hey, my sister's a really good writer. Could we try her? And she got to write a few chapters, and they fell in love. They really liked her writing, and she came on as the writer. We wrote it together. But that was really special. And it's so funny because it evolved it was supposed to be kind of more a big autobiography, but it evolved in kind of more of a young adult book with pictures and everything. And it's exciting because I have more books in mind, but it took 3 years to do that book. And it's not even, I love it. I definitely am very proud of it. But yeah, it took 3 years, and you just don't realize even what goes into it. But every day I still get messages about, you know, young girls or boys reading my book and loving it and feeling inspired. And I think that was definitely the point and the purpose of writing, you know, my story and my journey. And even if no one read it, it was still just good to get it out there.
Of course. And I mean, I guess that's what you're looking to do, right? Whenever you retire from swimming, like keep inspiring others, maybe by, you know, being a public speaker, maybe writing more books. I'm not really sure what plans or what projects you have in the future, but
the future, oh goodness. For sure, I want to be involved with swimming and Paralympics and writing more books and speaking and just sharing kind of my mindset and how I do things. And if that can inspire or motivate one person, then I think I've done my job well. And it's definitely been a wild ride, a crazy journey, and I'm still on it, and I'm still going through stuff. Even as an athlete, I'm still preparing for a Paralympics that was postponed. I'm still developing mental toughness. I'm still, you know, I met my biological family, my birth mom, who married my birth father, and I have siblings, but I'm still overcoming and still learning. And I don't always have all the right answers, but I definitely, I want to be real with people, right? Really show not always the pretty moments. And that's something I'm still working on and still being involved in the Paralympics. And I don't know really where my life is going to take me, but I definitely know that I'm excited for it. I'm excited for this journey for sure.
Of course, of course. I have one last question because, I mean, this podcast is really about, sharing professional athlete stories, with the hopes to inspire others. And you spoke about yourself being an inspiration. You don't mind that term. So what advice would you just give to others out there who are listening and they have big dreams and they're looking to achieve, big things in life?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, having those big dreams is like step number one, right? Dream big. If your dream sounds impossible, perfect. Like you're on the right track. Because you look around and I just think, someone made a car. So people make people have made all of these things, and it all started with a dream that sounded crazy, or just wanting to win a gold medal, or just writing a book, or I don't know, all of these crazy things that people do and we see every day in our world. That's where it starts, dreaming big. And then finding that passion, and then at the same time, you have to show up. I think that's the hard part that people don't really want to hear. You have to show up and you have to make sacrifices, and you have to, at times you're going to feel really alone, but also remembering that goal and that dream and coming back to it. And I think it's so important to write it down, put it where you can see it, and don't lose sight of it, but also show up every single day and put all of your heart and soul into it. And I think, I would much rather, I think we would all agree, we would much rather get to the end of our life and see all these crazy big dreams and goals and think, well, at least I tried, right? Like, at least I went after it, and having truly no regrets that you went after those goals or dreams with all of your heart. So dream big and be consistent for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much really for, coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm certain I'm not the only one to say that this has been really inspirational. I mean, everything that you do is truly inspirational, just looking at your Instagram, the messages that you share with people, your training, everything. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been great, really.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun to share my story.
Awesome. Thank you so much.